Alrighty, victory in the Pacific. You'll have to excuse both my poor box, my clumsiness, and my lack of an appropriate hat. But at least I got the corn cob, huh? It's the wrong kind too. Okay, well. This is a tough game for me to talk about, actually. One of the problems with it is, from the very beginning, it never really impressed me. I realize that, that the competitive player of the time that it came out really liked it, and I understand why. It really poses both players with a lot of interesting choices, all the kind of stuff that the Eurogamer loves, right? Yes, it has a lot of die rolling, but that all kind of evens out. There aren't usually singular rolls, at least with the basic game rolls. The searching rolls with the task forces come close to it, but there aren't many rolls in the basic game that really are going to shift the nature of the game heavily on a single die roll or something. Maybe the carrier locations. But you have to remember the Japanese historically avoided that situation by leaving Pearl Harbor and not continuing with the air attacks, which is an option that you have in this game. I don't like rolling a lot of dice, though. That's the first biggest issue for me. I really despise the amount of die rolling. And with the advanced rules, you have to put more on it. The advanced rules, as well as the little general expansion, more historical set of rules that I had, anything that attempts to fix this, it's kind of the lipstick on a pig type of thing. Not to say that this is a pig, or to say that that comes with certain negative connotations. That the pig is all bad. But a pig's not all bad. It comes with bacon, right? I mean, if you work and fix it a little to make it into bacon. The truth is, there is a game here that I think a lot of people that I know a lot of people like. And I think a lot of people who haven't been introduced to it might like. I got some points as to why you might not. But it does give you that really kind of agonizing, do I push just a little bit more into here? With the Japanese, you absolutely have to know how far you can take things. So the Japanese is the harder side to play. I think the game is mostly balanced. I've certainly won with both sides. However, it is much harder to win with the Japanese, and I haven't played it enough to really, definitively state, yes, this is a fairly balanced game. I wouldn't be able to do that with almost anything, to tell you the truth. A couple of games that I can say, I don't think these are balanced. But this one, I don't see any great hindrance there. What I do see is what we saw in the game that I played, what looked like a glorious Japanese win if you looked at a couple of different conditions. Hey, Pearl Harbor fell, the Japanese islands held out at the end, the Japanese even controlled the sea area around the islands. That should be a Japanese victory in my book. But it's not in this game. It really isn't. Because it comes down to where you are when you are. Right? It's not the end point that you're at. It's not your high water mark. It's this weird sort of, you've got to be doing well throughout the whole game. And it definitely left me with a bad taste in my mouth on this particular playing, the way it ended. That should have been a strong Japanese win. It should have been early on, but then I can kind of justify, okay, the Japanese overcommitted to taking Pearl Harbor, and they spent too much on it. That's one gripe for me, is from the historical point, although it gets some broad things right if people play maybe very well, if the Japanese player really knows what he's doing, I think you will follow history pretty closely there. He'll be very, very much more cautious than I am. But the game doesn't really put you in a position where it's obvious that's what you want to do. It looks like a game where you want to hold a lot of stuff early even, when you have that strength. And I think that's a trap that the game really sets for the Japanese player in terms of mindset. Other factors, well, clearly someone got the historical situation just wrong in a lot of ways. Ships are where they are when they're not supposed to be in terms of being in the theater. The expansion that I saw in the general that I used to use tried to fix some of that. But what's wrong with that? Well, the game was crafted to be this really good war-themed game, in the sense that you're making these really good decisions. It's not terribly unbelievable given the positioning, etc., but it's been, whatever fine-tuning has been done to promote play balance more than to promote historicity. And then when you start trying to modify something that's made to be a fairly simple game by making it more historical, you're probably throwing away that game balance. What I found with that expansion was it was too easy to win with the Japanese. I think it tilted it towards them, which may be why I don't even have the counters that I made. I had homemade counters for it. I drew on the map, obviously. I don't seem to have them kicking around. They're somewhere, but I don't know where. Components, actually these are, the actual ship counters are really good, even with kind of failing eyesight. When I put my contacts in, they affect my old age eyesight. I can no longer see in questionable light with them. I can still see fine with my glasses. I was able to read these nice big counters. Good for those of us from that era who are still gaming, right? I know some games I'm really having trouble with now. The map, brightly colored, pretty happy, smiley, and it works. It works very well, and it's not unimpressive in any sense. I mean, it's a little simplistic, but it fits the game, right? These order of battle sheets, I have no problem with the Japanese one, although I wonder why I colored in the Marines for some reason. No idea why I did that. I do know why I wrote things on this one, but the Allied order of battle is a little bit more annoying for me because it contains the withdrawals on it. I would rather that be just on paper than on one of these Avalon Hill charts. I constantly finding myself getting into trouble with this, and the fact that the Japanese one has a turn 1 section on it, and the Allied one does not have a turn 1 section on it. Turn 1 for the Allied one is here, which it always confuses me, and I usually don't realize where the hell it is. When I first try to set up the game, I set up my Japanese, and I say, well, where do I put all my groups? What the hell? It's got to be in the rules somewhere. Speaking of the rules, this is a fairly simple game. Somehow, Avalon Hill actually managed to make this not a lot of pages, but very difficult to cope with. Especially the surprise attack for the first turn, but other things too, like the sequence of play. There is a sequence of play section, but there's no bolding out, no help to tell you what you're doing in what order. So like the movement sequence, which is very important, you really kind of have to dive into individual paragraphs here instead of, say, SPI in the same era and quite a while earlier, which would give you a straight out, bolded set. They would take this much space to tell you, hey, these are the different things you do. Nothing like that in this game. And there's a lot of factors like that where you have to kind of hunt and peck to find what you've got. It's not formatted in a way... Avalon Hill paragraphs never are formatted in a way to find things. And this one's not terribly bad. And it does happen to be a tremendously simple game. But they still manage to make it kind of irritating. I don't know if that's the designer's fault, or if, as I suspect, it's pure Greenwood, because everything from that era, basically from 1972 or so on, and it's like there's just all these attempts to try to do rules in some different way. It's just a question of how badly did they fail, usually, with Avalon Hill games. Hamlin did a number of really weird and divergent, every design of his, except for maybe this and War at Sea, is just so different from every other, it seems like, that I look at. This is the guy who did Merchant of Venus. I'm trying to remember what else he did. Just, I know that when I looked it over his list of credits, and we're not talking about someone like Greenwood, who's got his name in the credits on everything, saying, yeah, I helped design each of these games as the developer. Yeah. I don't know if he's at fault for registering that. It doesn't seem like it's the case when you look at most rule books. But this one, for example, yeah, he's in components design. He's not put into design and development, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But somebody somewhere has put Greenwood into every game that he's been associated with as a designer on BGG, which is just weird. I don't know what it's. Anyway, the thing is that I really do see why people like this. Now, what I was going to say why people would not like it. Well, first of all, there's going to be a group of people who are going to say, all that die rolling means a lot of luck. It doesn't. Trust me. I mean, a lot of die rolling does not mean a lot of luck. The more die rolling you have, the less luck you probably actually have in a game. A game where you're rolling 3 or 4 attacks, and each one is key, and there's a 1 in 6 chance of something major happening, like 2 to 1 attack with an attacker eliminated in the top of it or something. Those are the games with a lot of luck in them. This one, you pretty much can tell who's going to win a given battle. Now, once you add the task force rules in there with the search, the hidden fleets where day attacks can happen on one side but not on the other, yeah, that does begin to twist things, and there does become a lot of luck. But in the base game of this is a fairly good risk management game. You can guess I will get a little unlucky, but you're not going to get terribly unlucky unless the other guy's cheating. But some people have that feeling that there's too much luck if they're rolling lots and lots of dice. And that will be a distaste to them. I look at it just as the rolling lots and lots of dice is an annoying thing to do. And again, through all those expanded rules, especially the task force ones, and you're rolling too many dice. Much better, just roll out the combats. It pretty much tends to work out that way anyway, even if you're playing with the task force rules. But I wanted that extra flavor. Now I know not to, and probably won't play it that way for the next 3 or 4 playings. But the other thing is, this is a little longer than a lot of the games that people who seem to really like either the competitive games or the more modern gamer who may not have seen this, who's used to, I don't know, maybe an ASL or something like that you can sit down and play in a couple hours. This takes a bit more. I'd say this is probably close to a 6-hour game. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to tell. It feels like if you really know what you're doing, a half hour or 20 minutes a turn is possible. Now, if it's 20 minutes a turn, right, you're talking 3 hours, and that's more in the range that maybe people would like. So people who really are comfortable with it and just sitting down and playing it. Unfortunately for me, I don't play it opposed very much. It's, if I want to play a strategy game, and that's what this really breaks down to, a game where I'm really kind of pitting myself against someone else rather than a simulation, I'm not going to choose something with a war theme or any theme, really. I'm going to play something like Go or, I don't But yeah, now I could see introducing this to someone and playing it. But again, it wouldn't be a matter of both of us knowing the rules and just really wanting to play it and knowing a dead cold. So there would still be this struggle, and there would be this period where you have to think and puzzle out what my best moves are in each turn. And that slows it down tremendously. There is a lot of thought as to where to place your pieces, etc. Anyway, overall, for me, this game is not a big hit, but I can see where it would be for a whole lot of people. And, you know, there's a reason this was popular, and still is, and still carries over. It gives you those kind of competitive thinking, you know, little situations where you're faced with something where you have to make a decision. Those decisions aren't necessarily easy. How much you want to push your luck, how much it's worth. And with the Japanese, how much you want to take and how many of your ships you want to pay to do it. Because early on you have the ability to really push quite far. We saw in my game, enough to take Pearl. Probably could have taken Samoa as well if I chanced it. Here's the thing. If I had taken Samoa as well, it's game over. Okay? So by taking that risky move to go for Pearl, I should have gone for Samoa. I didn't think I had a chance of losing with Japan, though. And that's where I flubbed it, basically. Once you commit and spend yourself that hard, you've got to go the whole way. You can't say, okay, I'm doing well enough, I'll fall back. Because I ended up, 10 points back? Or was it 15? I don't know. Anyway, I was kind of surprised by that, because all through the early part of the game, I thought the Japanese had it nailed down. That I was making the cautious move by not going for Samoa. Turns out I was making the dumb move. Alright, it goes. And you know, I forgot all about that. When I did the wrap, I forgot completely, wow, I had a shot to nail this game down so the U.S. reinforcements could not come in. Interesting. Just shows how little my memory works. Alright.